70 years ago, the People's Republic of China was founded, marking the end of over 100 years of invasion and oppression. 70 years on, under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, China is now the world's second largest economy, engaging actively with almost every country on Earth. In this special series, we explore China's development over the 7 decades, from political and economic development to diplomatic and military evolution. What are the theories and events that have shaped China's past? What are the trends and challenges that will forge China's future? I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn. I've been coming to China for 30 years. I've witnessed astonishing changes. What do China's changes mean for the Chinese people and for the world? Watch our special series on Closer to China, 70 years and counting, China's new era and beyond. Seven decades ago, the founding of the People's Republic opened a new chapter in the long history of China, marking the end of a turbulent period of over 100 years of invasion and oppression. 7 decades later, China's transformation from a poor agrarian society into the world's second largest economy is a remarkable story. Under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, the CPC, the country's astonishing development surprised everyone. But the road was long and bumpy with obstacles and challenges. In this special series on the People's Republic's 70th anniversary, we assess China's transformation in 7 aspects, from political and economic development to diplomatic and military evolution to ecological and cultural progress. In this first episode, we explore the big vision and broad guidance of China's political theories and structures. For example, what is the CPC's new slogan or directive, and why now? And broadly, what lessons can the CPC learn from 70 years of experience to benefit the new era? We look to the past to guide the future, to be closer to China. Founded on October 1st, 1949, New China took 7 years to establish its socialist transformation. The country formed the first National People's Congress, drafted a constitution, and implemented the fundamental system of socialism, the political and institutional foundation for China's future development. From 1956 to 1978, China went through periods of significant challenges and turbulence. Isolated by both the West and the former Soviet Union, China successfully tested its first atomic and hydrogen bombs, and launched its first artificial satellite. But extreme leftist ideology, exemplified by the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, caused economic and social calamities. Since 1978, prioritizing economic development, China has been driving continuous and comprehensive reform, striving toward building a socialist country with Chinese characteristics. China is now the world's second largest economy, the largest manufacturing country, and the largest global trading country. People's livelihood has improved remarkably, and China has been a pioneer in engaging the public in the increasingly complex democratic process of contemporary governance. To explore China's political structures in the last 7 decades, and to discern how the country will carry out further reforms, I meet with political theorists and historians. Zheng Bijiang, a longtime senior advisor to China's leadership, Rana Mitter, director of the China Center at the University of Oxford, Yang Guanbin, Dean, School of International Studies, Renmin University, and Zhu Guanlei, former vice president of Nankai University. When New China was founded now 70 years ago, it chose the name the People's Republic of China. Now, we all know what China means, but I'd like to understand what's the meaning of those other two key terms, people and republic.
人民的范围
The concept of the people has evolved during the past 7 decades in roughly 3 stages. First, after the founding of the People's Republic of China, the people were identified in 5 categories: the working class, the peasants, the national bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie, and other patriots. Later, during the next stage, such as during the Cultural Revolution period, for example, the scope of those included with the people was curtailed. The concept then was that the petty bourgeoisie and the national bourgeoisie were not included with the people. And third, after the reform and opening up, with dynamic overall changes occurring, the concept of the people also became broader. Generally speaking, the people in today's interpretation consists of 4 groups. First are the majority socialist workforce, including workers, peasants, intellectuals, and civil servants. Second are all those working for the socialist cause, like private business owners. Third is the group of all patriots who support the CPC's leadership and socialism. And fourth are all patriots who support the reunification of the motherland and are dedicated to the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.
China had been a republic. In fact, Asia's first republic in 1912 was also tinged by a certain sadness, a certain feeling of gloom that things hadn't worked out because of the internal chaos, because of the wars that had been fought, and therefore it was time to renew the term. In Chinese, in fact, the term for the old republic, Minguo, is different from the one used today for People's Republic, Gongheguo. And for any Chinese speaker, that would indicate that it wasn't just a new country, it was also a new sort of system.
How would you approximately divide the 70 years into different stages or phases or eras so that we can understand the progress that has been made?
During Chairman Mao's tenure, from a political perspective, the Chinese people were liberated from foreign powers' invasion. During Deng Xiaoping's tenure, Chinese people became better off. After President Xi Jinping came to office, he said that Chinese people should become stronger, which is, of course, a comprehensive concept. It is more complete, referring not only to possessing more material wealth, but also having confidence in our own culture and being assertive in our own theories and pathways.
One thing that I would point out is that these days historians are beginning to get a little bit unhappy with the idea that there's this sort of clean break between one period and the others. We now know that various figures, such as former Prime Minister Zhou Enlai, were actually talking about modernization and economic reform before 1978, quite a bit before 1978, even in the late years of the Cultural Revolution. And now that we know that a lot of the changes, including the move towards markets, the move towards trying to change the nature of China's economic engagement with the world, were actually shifting before 1978. It wasn't simply like snapping your fingers and turning a light switch in 78, in a period that then continues without any sort of change.
Over the last 7 decades, China's people's standards of living have improved remarkably. Life expectancy has increased from around 35 years in 1949 to 77 years in 2018. Over the same period, the infant mortality rate declined from 250 per thousand to around 6 per thousand. By China's 6th national census in 2010, the illiteracy rate of the young and middle-aged dropped to less than 1%. And people's annual average disposable income per capita increased from 170 yuan, or about $24 in 1978, to over $4,200 in 2018. What are the special features of China's developmental history over the past 70 years?
To judge the development of the past 70 years, first of all, I must look at its fundamentals. Societal structure demarks the basis of the fundamentals of societal development. In a nutshell, though we had our twists and turns, a relatively good and vibrant composition of the members of society has taken shape. In the beginning, we had a structure of 2 plus 1. That is, after the socialist transformation in 1956, China was composed of the working class, the peasants, and the intellectuals. Sometimes intellectuals were seen as part of the working class, but sometimes not. So it is called 2+1. Such a simple social structure for roughly 600 to 800 million people was unprecedented in history. That societal structure was not ideal, and it contributed to a society lacking in vitality. After the reform and opening up, our societal structure has undergone tremendous changes under three factors. First, industrial restructuring started in the 1980s. Second, economic forms diversified in the 1990s when individual and private companies witnessed great leaps forward with large numbers of freelancers. Entering the 21st century was the third driving force. Urbanization came into play. Urbanization further promoted the development of the social structure. For example, intellectuals could take a bigger share. All these factors have facilitated the shift of our social structure from 2+1 to a more diversified mix.
As you look at the political changes over this period, what can you say about the social changes within Chinese society?
I think that there is probably no society on earth, certainly of the size of China, that has changed as much as China has over the last 70 years. You could argue that China has undergone a whole variety in succession of social experiments about how a people should organize themselves and how their society should work around that. Now, if you go to the more recent part of that 70-year period, the last half or so, you're talking about the social effects of a very different sort of economic model, one in which markets became in particular much more important. And that has had a huge effect on the way in which society operates. China today is much more consumerist, it's much more individualistic, it's also older than it was in terms of its population concentration. And those have been immensely important changes that will have a lot of influence in the next 20, 50 and 70 years.
The changes to Chinese social stratification are deep-seated and long-term. China used to be an agrarian society, but now we have the social structure of an industrial economy. In the long run, democratic legal system building and economic restructuring brought about different social foundations. The process will also bring corresponding problems along with it. As social factors increase, individual pursuits will rise.
The man in this photo is Nie Shubin. He was executed in 1995 for raping and murdering a woman on the outskirts of Shijiazhuang City in North China. In 2016, the Second Circuit Court under the Supreme People's Court revoked the previous verdict, ruling that the conviction had been based on insufficient evidence and unclear facts. China's judicial authorities have pledged to learn lessons from past errors and to prevent such cases in the future. From 2012 to 2017, judicial organs redressed 34 major wrong or mishandled cases. To improve judicial justice and credibility, measures have been instituted so that judges assume lifetime responsibility for cases they handle and are held accountable for any miscarriages of justice. In addition, new laws were also formulated. In 2014, the central leadership decided to compile the general provisions of the civil law, a crucial first step in developing the civil code. The law, a key element in building China into a moderately prosperous society by 2020, aims to regulate civil activities and modernize state governance. All these work toward the building of a socialist country with rule of law.
We have the basic model of integrating democracy with the rule of law. What does that mean? It means that if democracy is void of the rule of law, it will only incur disasters. We once lived through that. The democracy of the Cultural Revolution was unbearable. In response, China officially set up a basic state governance strategy via the rule of law. It is essential. We are building a legal system with Chinese characteristics. From the Constitution to criminal law and criminal procedure to civil law and civil procedure, a basic legal system is formed. But it still needs to be improved. We also carry out judicial reforms, including judicial independence, death penalty approval from the top courts, legal assistance to underprivileged groups, the establishment of the system of legal representation, and the trial and jury system.
How do you judge, looking longitudinally across Chinese society, about the importance of rule of law, and how has that been interpreted and how has it been changing?
I think you could look at China's development of rule of law as being a series of different sorts of experiments in various areas. On the one hand, you could argue that perhaps one of the areas where it's had the most effect is in terms of commerce. Now, one of the things that anyone would note about the last 40 years or so of Chinese society is that entrepreneurialism, business, and the size of the economy have taken off like, nobody's business. It's really been a huge change. Sometimes law has been slow to catch up with that particular development. There are also some areas of criminal law where there have been reforms, for instance, in areas to do with the death penalty, which many of us are glad to see is being reduced significantly in some areas, although I have to say many of us would like to see it abolished altogether sooner rather than later. So in particular areas, you can see that legal change, legal reform has been of significant importance in China.
What's the relationship between rule of law and the nature of the People's Republic of China?
In the final analysis, republic means the people make decisions over the public affairs of their own country. That right belongs to the people and is guaranteed by law. When talking about law-based governance, the rule of law should not only be apparent in the legislative process, nor simply manifest in the decision-making process of the officials. Given the size of China, there are multiple policy decision levels, including the central level, the provincial level, the municipal level, the county level, and the township level. That is to say, officials of each level are subject to multiple rules and regulations. That is rule of law. We can be neither willful nor wayward.
Well known as the Hawaii of China, Hainan, the country's southernmost province, will become a new pilot-free trade zone, enjoying higher-level opening up policies. It will accelerate opening up of modern agriculture, high-tech industries, and modern services. Xingzi Ye's business fits well. She decides to expand further.
We can get things done by submitting materials to this reception desk once and for all. We don't need to get ratification from different government departments, such as the Land Resources Department or Urban Planning Department. As the first phase construction of our project has successfully completed, I'm here to submit our plans for the second phase.
Hainan plans to foster a law-based, business-friendly environment. In the past, for example, a construction project would need permissions from various government departments, a laborious, time-consuming process. Now, various types of plans can be integrated into a single master plan, streamlining the approval process. According to the Ease of Doing Business Index released by the World Bank in 2018, China leaped from 78th place to 46th place, showing that the country had dramatically improved its business environment. China's strong performance is a result of a concerted campaign by the central government to streamline the country's bureaucracy and to create a more attractive environment for establishing a business. China talks about the importance of governance capacity as a major criterion to evaluate the form and structure of government anywhere, and particularly in China. So what's the relationship between governance capacity and political reform?
We have made relentless exploration. In 2011, the Arab Spring took place. And before that, the color revolution swept around the world. But have those so-called political system modernization and westernization brought about better governance? No. What they had were national secession, political turmoil, long-standing ineffective governance, and people's basic demand being left unmet. After drawing a worldwide comparison, the party proposed the modernization of national governance in the third plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee. Therefore, when comparing one country with another, We should not simply focus on which structure has better systems or who is more modernized, but look to the government that is more able to satisfy the people's basic needs for their life.
We particularly emphasize the building of a service-oriented government. It's not about one or two tasks, but a strategy for the development of the Chinese government going forward. The transformation of the government functions was proposed in the 1980s and is still an ongoing process. Like economic restructuring, the building of a service-oriented government is a highly complicated process. In recent years, people have noticed that we have made positive explorations in terms of delegating power, streamlining administration, and optimizing government services, such as reducing approval procedures, strengthening supervision, and broadening the range of services.
How do we interpret the capacity for good governance in terms of the political structure that China has today?
Good governance is about, to use a phrase beloved of Mao Zedong, serving the people. But that can't be just a phrase. It actually has to be about thinking proactively and positively about how government actually works with the people, not above them. If people are thinking that they have to basically obey the government rather than work with the government, then things are going in the wrong direction.
Consultation is the most historic political tradition in China. When democracy was introduced to China, we combined consultative and democracy into consultative democracy. Consultative democracy is the most important form of democracy in China. In December 2016, the CPC Central Committee issued the regulation that consultative democracy should be promoted across the nation and at all levels. What I see in this regulation is that consultation is required between parties, between government departments, between the government and the society, and between the government and enterprises. To put it specifically, in our political life, for example, the annual budgetary plan of a township must be subject to not only the deliberate discussions in the People's Congress of a township, but the review of the representatives of each village. This is a common practice across the whole country.
70 years ago, the People's Republic of China was founded, marking the end of over 100 years of invasion and oppression. 70 years on, under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, China is now the world's second largest economy, engaging actively with almost every country on earth. In this special series, we explore China's development over the 7 decades, from political and economic development to diplomatic and military evolution. What are the theories and events that have shaped China's past? What are the trends and challenges that will forge China's future? I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn. I've been coming to China for 30 years. I've witnessed astonishing changes. What do China's changes mean for the Chinese people and for the world? Watch our special series on Closer to China, 70 years and counting, China's new era and beyond. As we now celebrate the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, we look forward 30 years from now to the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China in 2049. How do you see the lessons learned over the last 70 years applying to what needs to be achieved over the next 30 years?
I believe that in the last 7 decades, the highlights in Chinese politics are shown in our adherence to one specific direction, in our approach in considering the interest of all groups. The adherence to the one direction refers to the fact that in a country as populous as China, we must stick to socialism. Since President Xi Jinping came to office, over 80 million people have been lifted out of poverty. That is very typical in socialism. But behind our adherence to socialism, there lies the leadership of CPC, which is unshakable. My second point is the approach of government to considering the interest of all groups. The goal of a country's governance is to incorporate different groups. Politically speaking, there are left-wingers, people taking the middle ground, and right-wingers. And from a social point of view, there are upper, middle, and lower classes. The policies delivered by the government must account for all the interests of the various groups.
Given the realities of the Chinese system today, going forward, if you were asked privately to give your advice for the kinds of political reform that are useful and beneficial to China within its current system, what would you be saying?
At the moment, most of the obstacles that there are, and there are many, which China faces in talking to much of the rest of the world, are not placed there by the foreign world. They're placed there by China itself. And China just needs to learn what it's done really well, believe in itself, and actually operate on a much more relaxed and chilled basis.
China recently published a white paper on China and the world. From China's experiences over the past 70 years, what lessons can other countries learn, especially developing countries?
First, in terms of basic thoughts, I am more inclined to stress that development methods should mainly depend on indigenous momentum and self-exploration, given that different countries have different development paths. For other developing countries to draw experience from China, I value a balanced relationship between reform, development, and stability. But some countries have not managed that balance well. China, over the past 70 years, and in particular during the past 40 years of reform and opening up, has paid close attention to handle the relations between those three factors of reform, development, and stability. Those experiences are worth our research and could serve as a topic for exchanges with other countries.
As we look toward mid-century, 2049, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, roughly mid-century 2050, China has set the goal, the ultimate goal, for China to become a fully modernized socialist country. What are your hopes? What are your fears? What do you think are the challenges? What should China be concerned about in order to reach those grand goals?
I believe that we can approach this issue from the perspective of world order. In most countries, political systems are guided by capitalism. I prefer to call them capital-centered order. In this order, the first step is a market economy, and that will lead to social differentiation. The second step is the multi-party system, followed by the third step of representative democracy. My worry is that if China also chooses capital-centered order, it may risk losing its own Chinese model and will not end up in a better future. The reason why China can make it to today lies in what I call people-centered order. That is different from capital-centered order. The first step of the people-centered order is also a market economy. The second step is social differentiation and wealth gap brought about by a market economy. The third step is not a multi-party system, but rather a multi-party cooperative system under the leadership of CPC. The fourth step is democratic centralism in the political system, containing democracy and centralism. The result of this order is a people-oriented development. So the biggest challenge for China is how to maintain its own people-centered order instead of degenerating into capital-centered order. This is a fundamental issue in future development of China.
China's 70th anniversary is an occasion for celebration, but more importantly, it is a time for reflection. From a devastated economy in a closed society to the world's second largest economy engaged openly with almost every country on earth, when historians of the future write the chronicles of China, these 70 years will surely be a highlight. There are challenges, of course. Slower growth, social disparity, massive pollution, the West's concern about China's rise. That's why CPC General Secretary Xi Jinping continues to renew and reform the party. Thus, the party's new slogan or directive, Bu Wang Qu Xin, Lao Ji Shiming, remain true to our original aspiration and keep our mission firmly in mind. The Politburo tasked the campaign to forge the political character of loyalty, integrity, and a keen sense of responsibility to realize the great dream. The intent at this time of escalating uncertainties is to upgrade the party system as the CPC has taken on even greater responsibility for leading the country. In the following weeks, we continue to explore China's remarkable 70 years. In the next episode, we discern the country's economical miracle to be closer to China.